So welcome to the JeffACE Care Support Group for October 25th, 6 to 7 p.m. So welcome. So just a quick little overview of who we are. We are from the Jefferson Autism Center of Excellence, or JeffACE, at Thomas Jefferson University. And our mission is to be an international hub of autism activities dedicated to high impact research, forward-thinking education, innovative community outreach, and worldwide programs. So for today's session, we're going to be going over the sensory system and how it relates to autism. So we just have a quick video that we'll share that goes a little bit over the sensory system and gives a good overview. That was just a quick overview of the sensory system. So going a little bit more in depth into each individual system. So we have the 5 senses that we typically know: smell, which detects any sense or odors; sight, so visual detection of objects and people in the environment; we have touch, which is detecting objects and people in the environment that is touching our bodies; hearing, which is the perception of any noises in the environment; and taste, which is our ability to detect any sweet, sour, salty, or bitter flavors. And then we have 3 other senses that aren't quite as widely familiar. So we have proprioception, which is detecting any changes in your body's position. So this is knowing where your body is in the environment and helps determine how much force is needed to move an object. For example, if you close your eyes and stretch out your arms, you're still able to touch your nose because you're aware of where your arms are in space and where your face is. So then we have vestibular sense, which provides information to our brain about motion, head position, and our overall balance. It can detect different movements, such as spinning, turning upside down, rocking or moving fast in a car. For example, you're going down a slide and you don't get dizzy because you know you're moving down. And lastly, we have interoception, which is being able to understand and feel what is happening inside our bodies. So this helps with regulation of hunger, thirst, body temperature, and heart rate. An example of this sense is being able to sense when you're feeling hungry or if you need to use the bathroom.
So just a little information on what sensory integration is. It's the brain's ability to process, integrate, and organize sensory information from the body and the environment. So some examples of this are if you get a new shirt and you have a tag, even though you feel it, you don't really notice it. Another example is when you hear a siren outside, your brain starts to filter out that sound. So some sensory differences in autism relate to reactivity. So hyperreactivity refers to reacting strongly to stimuli not typically noticed by others. And these individuals may be sensory avoiding. So for example, if there's very bright lights, children may cover their eyes or become very sensitive to the bright lights or bright noises. For hyporeactivity, there may be no reaction or barely reacting to any stimuli, and they may be sensory seeking. Up to 90% of autistic individuals experience sensory differences. So, sorry.
There are a variety of different treatment approaches that you can take. One of the really big ones that's backed by a lot of evidence is AIR's sensory integration. So through this treatment approach, sessions provide sensory-rich opportunities with challenges to different types of skills. So challenges to posture or visual skills. There can even be challenges to oral or motor control. The activities are individually tailored to each child and allow for them to make adaptive responses to the changing environment. So the therapists are working with the children to make sure that the activities are specific to them and provided at the just right challenge, so they're not too difficult or too easy. Another method for treating sensory differences is using sensory-based strategies. So these strategies can help an autistic person who is experiencing sensory difficulties. They're typically used to improve self-regulation or that ability to maintain kind of a stable emotional and arousal state, or they're used to improve behavior in the short term. They function under the principle that sensory input increases or decreases someone's level of alertness or arousal. And these strategies can be used with individuals who seek sensory experiences, are hyperreactive or hyporeactive. These are just some examples of sensory-based strategies that might be helpful. When you're trying to pick a strategy, it's really important to consider what sense the child is struggling with and if they're hyper or hyporeactive. So some examples are using weighted blankets to provide some pressure to the child, jumping on the trampoline to provide some vestibular input. A lot of children will do well with push or pull activities, so using those heavy objects or long strings to provide traction on the body. Children who are struggling with auditory processing might benefit from noise canceling headphones to block out some of that extra auditory stimuli that's happening around them. And a lot of kids who are experiencing differences in tactile or touch sensation really enjoy messy play. So things like using paint or shaving cream, or even dry, more textured materials like rice, corn, or beans can be really helpful when you're trying to employ a sensory-based strategy for kids with tactile issues. Some other strategies are using deep pressure. So similar to a weighted blanket, a really tight, firm bear hug or a massage might be regulating for some kids. Other children might enjoy white noise or calming music to help drone out some of that background noise. Some kids do really well with movement activities like jumping, running, or climbing, and that helps them regulate for some less preferred activities later on. Children might also like walking on uneven surfaces, so challenging their balance, either walking on a balance beam or some soft, squishy surface like a pillow or even a soft yoga mat. And lastly, children might do well with vibrations or brushing sensations along the arm, hand, or back to help calm themselves down. Another method is using sensory adapted environments. So this strategy considers the sensory differences and experiences of the autistic person in different environments. A therapist or a parent who's using this approach might ask themselves questions like, what makes it hard for this child to participate in daily activities? For example, is it too bright at the playground and that's what's inhibiting them from playing successfully? Is it too loud? Or another child might face challenges participating in healthcare appointments like the doctor's office or the dentist's office. Sensory adapted environments take sensory differences into account to help adapt the environment and provide a sensory friendly space with materials and strategies available. This photo right here is an example of a sensory adaptive environment. So as you can see, there's a lot of lights. This might be really helpful for a kid who's seeking that visual input. So a lot of movement and lights around the room might help them regulate themselves. You can see there's also a lot of different textures for kids who need to feel things and a lot of different opportunities for movement. So a lot of opportunities for the child to interact with the space and get on different levels in the environment to really see everything that's in there.
So taking all of this new knowledge into account, you can reflect on an experience that you have had with the autistic person in your life related to possible challenges with sensory integration or any sensory differences you may have noticed. So consider what happened and how can you use this knowledge from today to support that autistic person in a similar challenge? How could you advocate for this person with sensory differences in different settings and during healthcare participation? For example, attending a doctor's appointment in the waiting room, it may be too loud, the lights may be too bright, chairs might not be comfortable for that individual. So how can you provide different strategies and materials to help make this experience better for this person? So just thinking about what we mentioned as well with sensory bins, implement this at home. So what are some materials you can use to create a sensory-based activity with the autistic person in your life? For example, you could create a sensory bin, and it's really simple to make. You can just take a plastic bin, whether you have one from home or the dollar store, and then find rice, beans, oatmeal, birdseed, cotton balls, popcorn kernels, shaving cream, any different type of texture, whether it's wet or dry, and then add a few toys in there as well, just to allow the child to experience those different tactile sensations and just provide some different input for them.
If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you.